Hello, everyone. My name is Elvia. I am a diplomat at the U.S. Embassy. Welcome to our second session on the Super Bowl. So, last week we had our first session where we talked about the history and Super Bowl traditions, American football. And one of the last things that we did with our guests is we asked them who they thought was going to win this year, and we left off with predictions. So now we are back with you, and we have the Super Bowl behind us. So it happened this past weekend, and we have a few other guests here who are ready to talk about the game and share more about American culture regarding American football, the Super Bowl, give their impressions, and I will let them each introduce themselves. So we'll start with Sarah Tellale, please.
Thank you, Elvia. I'm Sarah Talalay. I'm the Cultural Affairs Officer here at the U.S. Embassy, and a little bit of a ringer because I used to cover the business of sports in South Florida before I became a diplomat, so have actually been to a couple of Super Bowls.
Great. Nastya?
Hi, everybody. You might remember me from last week's chat about the Super Bowl. I'm Anastasia. I am a public diplomacy officer here at the U.S. Embassy in Tashkent. I'm also responsible for American Spaces in Uzbekistan. So hi, American Corner Karshi. I hope you guys are enjoying our Super Bowl series. Hopefully we can get down there and visit you in person sometime soon. Also, I'm here because, I'm a Patriots fan, and even though my team is not in the Super Bowl this year, it still is something near and dear to our hearts from people from New England. So back to you, Elvia.
Thanks. So last but not least, we have Matt Habanowski, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Habanowski. I am the head of our economic and political section here at the U.S. Embassy in Tashkent. I am a huge sports fan, and like Nastya, I am a Patriots fan, so I didn't have one of my teams in the Super Bowl this year, but still woke up early and watched it. It was a great game, and looking forward to talking about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. So before we begin, I just want to be clear that we are going to have a conversation. We can see that you are able to post comments. So if you want us to talk about anything in particular, I am monitoring and can bring it up to our guests. And another thing is that there will be opportunities to win prizes. So please pay attention to all of the information, because there will be I will stop at certain points and ask a question about what we're discussing so that you have a chance to win what we call a swag bag. So a bag full of gifts from the U.S. Embassy. So with that, let's talk about how did the game go this year? Like, what was different about Super Bowl 2020? Maybe since Matt is a big football fan, can you tell us who played this year? Where were the teams from? And what do you think stood out to you?
Yeah, so the game this year was between the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati being in the U.S. state of Ohio, and of course Los Angeles in California. For those who haven't seen the score, Los Angeles won 23-20. It was an exciting game that came right to the end. And Cincinnati had the ball with a chance to tie or to take the lead, and they were unsuccessful, so the Los Angeles Rams won. Now, what I think was really interesting about the game this year is that it was actually played in Los Angeles. Now, what happens every year, the Super Bowl is held in a different city. And it's usually in the kind of the warm weather, the fun cities of the United States. So Miami and New Orleans and Las Vegas and Los Angeles. But this year, it was a coincidence that the game was being held in Los Angeles, and the football team from Los Angeles, the Rams, participated in the Super Bowl. So that's something that only very rarely has happened.
So do you think that any sports team who gets to play in their city have a special advantage?
So sometimes now, what's interesting is that the Cincinnati Bengals, and from Cincinnati, Ohio, and Ohio's in the Midwest, so right now it's the middle of the winter there, and Cincinnati Bengals fans are very passionate, very enthusiastic fans. So what I hear is that the stadium was about 2/3 filled with Bengals fans, and it makes sense, right? Because a lot of the fans from Cincinnati, where it's cold and it's gray, and their team has not been in the Super Bowl, I think, for 33 years. So I think what happened is that a lot of fans from the state of Ohio decided to make a vacation and go to sunny, warm Los Angeles and see their team play in the Super Bowl.
Oh, I think that's a great advantage, especially with the warmer weather. I hear it's very cold in Ohio. And for our listeners, if you look at a US map, it's not close by. So when you look at Cincinnati and Los Angeles, they're really far apart. It's a pretty long multi-day road trip. So the people who were there are probably really big fans. We have the advantage of having a guest who has been to multiple Super Bowls. So Sarah, can you tell us, what was that like? What did you experience?
Thank you. A couple of things to Matt's point before I move into what it was like to go to a Super Bowl. The home team has only been able to play in the home team stadium twice. Last year was actually the first time, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did win last year. So it is very rare, and it sounds like that might be a home field advantage. I would also say, and this would go into the idea of what going to a Super Bowl is like. It is often said that the game itself is actually not the spectacle. Often the game is not that exciting, but it has been pretty exciting the past several years. So that's changed. And I really enjoyed the game this year. I thought it was fun. But going to the event it's a week-long party in a warm place, typically in a warm place, as Matt said. What makes it interesting that Matt talked about how many Bengals fans were in Los Angeles is that two things. One, the Rams have not been in Los Angeles. They've been in Los Angeles on and off. I don't actually remember the full history. You guys probably know that better than I do. But also, Los Angeles is not known as a particularly sports savvy place. It's more about celebrity. And so people were probably there for the spectacle of the event as opposed to necessarily supporting the Rams. Just a thought. Going to a Super Bowl, the week of events is amazing. Everybody who's anybody in the NFL, certainly, is in the town where the Super Bowl is. There's a whole conference area, like a big hotel ballroom kind of thing, that's full of reporters and radio and TV. And basically the athletes like run the gauntlet of these, TV and radio broadcasters. And then there's a whole ton of celebrities too, just like you see in the advertisements for during the Super Bowl. It's just a big party, and it's fun.
So speaking of advertisements, I'm gonna take that last point and ask Nastia if she saw anything interesting this year. So for our new listeners, because we did talk about Super Bowl advertising last week, but those who weren't there or did not get to see the video, what can you tell us about Super Bowl ads, and are there any that are your favorites?
Yes, Elvia, I would love to tell you about Super Bowl commercials and why they're important. But first, I wanted to share with you guys, because I didn't get to go to the Super Bowl because I was here in Uzbekistan working with the rest of you, but my sister-in-law did. And my sister-in-law is my brother's wife. And she was there for work, just like Sarah used to go. My sister-in-law, Lauren, goes every year for work. And I wanted to show you a picture of my nephew because I think he's very, very cute, and sort of what he. Oh no! Did this? Oh no! What happened to the picture? Did you guys see the picture of my nephew when the first touchdown was happened?
No, we can't see it, but I'm trying to see if I can bring it up here.
Oh.
Oh no. So, well, what is a touchdown? Can you tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of you might remember from last week when we talked about the basic points of football. Touchdown is what we call it when they score. So it's a goal, basically. That works. My nephew has just turned 1 2 weeks ago, and the sign in the United States for touchdown, instead of yelling goal, everybody goes touchdown.
Touchdown!
So, exactly. So if you yell that at my 1-year-old nephew, he does this, and that's the photo I wanted to share. Well, everybody was watching for my sister-in-law at the Super Bowl. So anyway, going back to the commercials and why they're important. If some of you remember from last week, we told you that the Super Bowl commercials are really something of an art, and they cost an awful lot of money. Sean had exact figures of how many trillions of zooms they cost per 30 seconds of airtime. And the reason we said was because there is 100 million people usually watching the Super Bowl. So this is advertising gold, basically. And it's a good opportunity for companies to promote their existing products that they already know about, because there's a massive audience watching. But also, I was talking with Sarah earlier, and a lot of we noted that a lot of famous products have actually been introduced for the very first time at the Super Bowl. We came up with a couple things that I think all of you know about, like Apple computers came up for the first time, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody had ever heard of the Mac. You know, that was what the first computer, Apple computer, was called. And they introduced it via a Super Bowl commercial in 1984, right, Sarah? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. And of course, this is a long time ago, so we're not going to show you that commercial because it's actually like pretty poor quality by today's standards. But we did have a couple other commercials that we wanted to talk about. We thought it'd be fun to show you and discuss why they're important.
All right. Do you want to show us one?
Yes, I would. Let's go ahead and start with a commercial from General Motors. So this is a commercial for cars. 1 second. Okay, can you guys see this?
No, something's happening. All right.
All right. Yes, we see.
Yep. Okay. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, our takeover of General Motors is complete.
Dr. Abel, GM's Ultium platform will power our whole operation. Now we can reduce tailpipe emissions.
Oh, please, cheer.
For my son.
Your son? I shall name him Baby Me.
It was a brilliant way to bring together what they're trying to do from the headquarters.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe before we move on talking about the commercials, we're going to take a quick moment to have a quiz question for our audience. So everyone watching, the first person to get this right will win a prize. We will reach out to you directly and coordinate how you will receive your gift. And the first question is going to be something that our guests have already mentioned, and that is, where in the U.S. was the Super Bowl this year? So we talked about the cities. Where was it? All right. So we're gonna leave that. We'll leave some time for people to answer in the comments, and we'll continue with the GM commercial.
Okay, so in the beginning, it showed the big GM logo. General Motors is one of the biggest, if not maybe the biggest or most biggest original American auto manufacturer, and has a lot of significance for us as a company and a lot of brand recognition. But I'm wondering if the audience actually knows what movie that was referencing, because I think you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but for those of us sitting here, we all instantly recognized when that came on what movie and what the plot line was about and what was going on and who they were trying to target, right? You guys all knew.
We
Austin
know.
Powers,
The
right?
question is our audience. Yes, Austin Powers.
Yeah, Austin Powers. And so what's interesting about that, though, is Austin Powers came out, I don't know, 20 something more than that years ago, I guess. But it was trying to tie that into people our age, probably ish demographic, who are trying to want to buy cars, but also are interested in saving the environment. And so it was talking about emissions and reducing greenhouse gases, and how the villain, the bad guy in this story, was sort of trying to be the old way we used to make cars, and his son was promoting the way that we should go into the future. And so that's just one example of a car commercial that we saw an awful lot of. Traditionally, there are tons of car commercials during the Super Bowl, but this year we all noticed that electric cars was a huge thing. Lots of big companies were promoting their electric cars. I saw ads from BMW. I saw ads from Kia, from GM. Do you guys remember other e-cars, as we call them, in Uzbekistan? There were a lot. Anyway, so the point is, you can see trends in U.S. culture and things that we care about. The environment is something a lot of people are paying a lot of attention to now. We're looking at climate change. It's actually one of our government's biggest priorities, is to try to stop that and slow it down. And so those sort of values are reflected in Super Bowl commercials. Car manufacturers are trying to get the word out that they care about things that are important to us, to Americans who are going to be buying their products. So we thought that electric cars was one of the big themes this year from the Super Bowl commercials.
That's so true, Nastya. You can really see what Americans care about in a particular year by the commercials that you see in the Super Bowl. Before we move on, I want to congratulate Muhammad Hadyatulayev, who correctly answered our question about the Super Bowl being played this year in Los Angeles. So, Muhammad, we will reach out to you directly and coordinate how you will receive your gifts. Congratulations. All right. So, I think an important part of culture is food. So, speaking of food, maybe Matt, can you tell us what do Americans usually eat during the Super Bowl? Did you have any specific snacks this year? I mean, it was in the morning for you, so did you make any changes to your traditions because of where you are in the world?
Yeah, so the Super Bowl, while Sarah said is right, she said it is a big party at the Super Bowl site, but it's also very common for people to have parties at their houses all across the United States. And there's certain foods that you typically see. My favorite that I make every Super Bowl are buffalo wings. Now, you may say, well, buffaloes are big animals; they don't really have wings, but
That's true.
But
so how are
no,
buffalo wings different?
So these are chicken wings that first came from the city of Buffalo, and they're spicy. So I bought some of my wings at Korzinka, and I deep fried them so they're nice and crispy, and then I cover them in spicy buffalo sauce, and that's one of our traditions that we always make. What else? And then people often have nachos, which is tortilla chips with lots of great stuff on top, whether it's meats or vegetables, cheeses, salsa. And depending on where you are, some people, if you live in the warm climate, you can barbecue on Super Bowl Sunday. So yeah, let's just say that Super Bowl Sunday is not the healthiest day in the United States. I think it's one day when everyone probably eats too much.
I would have to agree. Do you have any thoughts on food and the Super Bowl, Sarah?
Thank you, Elvia. That's a great question. In addition to nachos, people eat an extraordinary number of avocados on Super Bowl Sunday.
Wait, you spoiled the commercial.
Oh no, we will follow up. We will follow up.
I thought we were going to then, or I thought we were introducing the commercial.
Go forth, you are now.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yes, apparently it is the biggest day for consumption of avocados. Allegedly, 13.2 million pounds of avocados are consumed on Super Bowl Sunday, often in guacamole. And that equates to 26 million individual avocados. Maybe it's time to show the commercial. I don't know.
Let's do it.
That sounds like a great idea. Here we go.
Behold
This year.
the bounty of Earth. This is the cube of Rubik. This simple puzzle was actually considered unsolvable by the humans.
Did they not have brains?
Simple ones. Now, this was apparently a 21st century torture device.
How long do they keep them strapped in there?
Sometimes hours at a time. Pretty gruesome. Here we have their alphabet. It was called emoji. Few symbols could express the vast extent of their emotion. They had chia pets, just like we do. And this white gold dress that caused the Civil War. This is Scott Baio. But most amazing of all are the avocados from Mexico. They're always in season, so you can enjoy them all year long. Anybody want to feed Scott Baio, which included in the price of admission? No?
I mean, double dipped. It'll regenerate.
No, he won't. It's a quad milker.
Avocados from Mexico.
So Sarah already led into why they show avocado commercials.
Nastya, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Sarah already told us why they would show something like an avocado commercial, because if you didn't have the background knowledge about how many avocados were consumed every Super Bowl Sunday, you would just be watching the commercials and think like, why would the Mexican Avocado Growers Association spend millions and millions of dollars to show this to a bunch of people, eating chicken wings, like Matt said? But it makes sense because guacamole was featured in this commercial, right? Americans love guacamole. Even though it's not traditionally an American per se food, we've sort of adopted it as one of our own. And we really, really love the Mexican sort of dipping sauce. We love tortilla chips too for our Super Bowl, and that goes really well with guacamole. So I think there's probably a bunch of other things we're using the avocados for too, right? Were you going to say something, Sarah?
I'm sure it's a hamburger topping as well. I'm sure there's lots of other ways we're consuming avocados on Super Bowl Sunday. Just a reminder, since you pointed out that that companies are spending millions of dollars. I think we talked about this last week. 30 seconds went for an average of a 30-second commercial went for an average of $6.5 million. And viewership for the Super Bowl was up again this year, 112 million viewers. So still, I don't know if it's worth $6.5 million for 30 seconds, but a lot of viewership.
Sarah and Elvia, I'd be curious maybe later when we enter the discussion.
Are we going to talk about more commercials?
No, I would just be interested if the listeners could tell us what is the single most watched television event in Uzbekistan every year. I'm very curious. That's later for discussion.
Yeah, that's right. So we already know that the Super Bowl is the single most watched event in the United States every year. So if any listener out there can tell us what that is in Uzbekistan, we would like to know. I think it's time for another quiz question. But before we go on, are we going to show another commercial that we can prompt? Nope.
I would love to show another commercial. Sorry, my internet was having some bandwidth issues. Hopefully it'll work out so we can watch another video from this year. Let's see. Let's go with something to do with American. Well, actually, I will let everybody guess what it is, and then we'll discuss afterwards. Okay.
What's up, Jones? Jones.
You want to be loved by. It's not unusual to have fun with anyone. But when I see you hanging about with anyone, it's not unusual to see me cry.
Jones.
Woo! Jonas?
Yeah, it's keeping up with the Jonases now.
Try to keep up. Whoever you are.
Stay ahead in the all-new Tundra.
All right. Thank you, Nastya, for sharing yet another car commercial from this year's Super Bowl. So everyone, at the end of this commercial, you kept seeing Jones, and maybe I was thinking, but which Jones are they referring to? Who is Jones? So does anyone have an idea what they mean by keeping up with the Joneses? This is a really common saying in the United States. Do any of our guests care to comment on it? Keeping up with the Joneses? What does this mean?
Yeah, I think usually you hear people use that expression when, it's when you look at your neighbors and you see that your neighbors maybe have a new television or a new car. It's the idea of seeing what your neighbors have and either feeling jealous or wanting to have the same thing. And what they say is you're trying to keep up with the Joneses by having maybe the same or better television than your neighbor, or the same or a better car than your neighbor, or something like that. It's a very, very common saying in English.
And
go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say that I love this ad because this ad, it plays on the keeping up with the Joneses with the different cars, but also all of the actors are Joneses until we get to Nick Jonas. In addition, you may not know that the person who is singing the song is also a Jones. That's Tom Jones. So you've got, it's multi-generational, it's multicultural. Nick Jonas is married to Priyanka Chopra. It's got, this commercial has everything in it. What were you going to say, Nastia?
No, I was just going to say the same thing, just in case some of our audience didn't really get the Jones thing. It's because all of the actors, it's Tommy Lee Jones, who is the man that opened. It's Leslie Jones, the woman that came next. Rashida Jones is the next woman. And then at the end, it's sort of a funny play on words because it's Nick Jonas, the singer. And so, like, I also thought it was a great commercial and really like uniquely American, you know.
Yes, it was definitely very clever. So I'm going to take this moment to pose a second quiz question for our listeners. So viewers, our question for you is, can you name a Super Bowl food? The first person to do so, please write it in the chat and you will get a prize. We named many, and we named one in particular several times. This should be a really easy one. All right. So we had a comment in our chat somewhere, if I can remember where it was. It's about the halftime show. So this year's halftime show, we had several artists perform, American artists perform during the halftime show. And I'm curious to know, what were your impressions? What did you think? Any thoughts on the music itself, the artists, the show? What do you come for, Matt, for the halftime show?
So I thought the halftime show was fantastic. For people who did not see it, it was Dr. Dre and a lot of the kind of the artists that are in the Dr. Dre family, so to speak. So it included, let's see, who was in there? It's Mary J. Blige, Eminem. Who else was in there?
Kendrick Lamar and 50
Kendrick
Cent.
Lamar and 50 Cent. Yeah. And what I think is amazing about the halftime show, you know, I think the musical performance was great, and you guys can talk about that. But what I think is amazing is how quickly, you know, because it's in halftime of a real game, and I think the halftime is only about 20 or 30 minutes. So in this very short time, they set up an entire stage in the middle of the field. And this year the stage was really complicated and really cool because, you know, Dr. Dre is a rap artist from Los Angeles, and the stage looked like it was meant to look like a street from his neighborhood of Los Angeles, Compton, and it was really complicated and it had all sorts of different scenes. So I think, you know, the performance was great, but I think technically it's just really amazing how they can get that stage set up in a matter of seconds and then have a show in the middle of halftime.
You're right, Matt. That must take a lot of planning and rehearsing. I heard somewhere that these artists rehearse nonstop several times before they do the show so that they're prepared to do it within that very short period of time. Earlier, Sarah mentioned something about people coming for this to the Super Bowl for the spectacle. So is this what you were talking about, Sarah? The halftime show?
The halftime show is, thank you, Elvia. The halftime show is definitely part of the spectacle. And it's actually, there's this buildup when we learn who the halftime act is going to be. So it's a big deal that when the NFL chooses. And I thought this year was amazing. Technically, the music, it was beautifully produced. I think it's kind of telling that the NFL recognized hip hop and has finally sort of arrived in the 21st century, because this is the first time they've actually had a halftime show of this style. I will also say that it is really exciting. I was at the Super Bowl in South Florida in Miami in 2007 when Prince performed Purple Rain in the Rain. And that was an amazing experience. But my husband, who is including some of the clever comments in the chat. He was on the field, actually. He was running film for the AP during that game. And he said, watching this year's halftime show, the production value has increased, I mean, it's just amazing now. It's so much more superior to what it was. That 2007 was quite a long time ago, but it's incredible.
I bet. And before we get your impressions, Nastia, we do have a question in the chat, and maybe you can answer for our viewers. But someone wants to know, how do they select halftime performers? Do you have an answer? Yes, please.
I do. I know. Actually, it's sponsored. So this year, the halftime performers were sponsored by Pepsi. And so whatever company is sponsoring it, I don't think it's the same one every year. It's probably, maybe Sarah, you might know, but is it a bidding? Did they bid for the highest payer person corporate sponsor? Well,
excellent question, and I don't remember the answer to that.
Okay, but regardless, whichever corporation is sponsoring the halftime show selects the people that will perform during the halftime. I think we talked about it last time. Traditionally, when the NFL first started in 1966, which I learned last week from our chat, traditionally at halftime, they just did marching bands, which are very popular in American high schools. Everybody who plays an instrument, a lot of people like to be in the marching band, and still in college, and also very popular during halftime. And that's what the Super Bowl used to have up until the 80s, I believe. And then now that it's such a big money-making event, they get a corporate sponsor to choose.
So among all of the performers this year, did you have a favorite?
Yes, Mary J. Blige will always be my favorite. They could have put, 20 other people up there, and I don't think I would have cared. I actually saw her at another football stadium, I think maybe around 2005. My sister and best friend and I went to a concert in Giant Stadium, which has a different name, but right outside of New York City. And Mary J. Blige was one of the headliners. And we were on, one of the upper floors of the football stadium. And that football stadium holds maybe 50,000 people. I don't know. And people were just so excited and dancing so hard when Mary J. Blige started singing that, like, the concrete floor was moving up and down. And it was in the middle of a storm, and it was actually really quite scary. But I will never forget that, because I didn't think that a solidly built football stadium could actually move that much with all the people that were so into her show. It was so good. So I was happy to see her back again in another football stadium. And of course, also very happy to see such an amazing female artist as part of the lineup.
Yes, I have to agree. Mary J. Blige is a timeless act, very inspirational woman. And before I move on, I also wanted to take a moment to congratulate Dilnada Aripova, who correctly answered that one of our favorite Super Bowl dishes is guacamole. I think we drove that point home with showing the commercial about all of the avocados coming from Mexico. But yes, Dilnada, we will reach out to you and coordinate how you will receive your gifts. Congratulations. All right, I'm checking here to see if we have any more questions from our audience. But in the meantime, can you, Nastia, share any other commercials that may have stood out to you? Maybe we can talk about.
I can.
On words, or
I had a couple more clips from commercials, but I was also wondering if maybe we don't want to look at the halftime show for a second.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can do like a short best of, because like Matt said, it was during halftime, but it's still 14 minutes long. It's a little bit too long to show all of it here. So I'll just sort of fast forward through some of it. But here's the stage that Matt was talking about. This is on the football field, remember, everybody. Okay, and here, let's play a little bit of the show.
Y'all know what this is, so can y'all make some noise for my man Snoop Dogg? Come on, louder, y'all, louder.
Top dog, bottom all, yeah, I'm burning it up. DPGC, go ahead and turn it on up. BBT, LBC, yeah, we hook it back up. And when they make this in the club, they beat you got to get up. Club homies, drug homies, yeah, they giving it up. Low life, yo life, boy, we giving it up. Taking chances while we dancing in the party for show. Still my girl, 44, and she crept in the back door. These chickens looking at me strange, but you know I don't care. Step up in this mother, just a swing in my hair. Trick, good dog, you quick walk if you down with the shit. Take a bullet. And take this up on the jet. Out of town, put it down for the father of rap. And if you happen to get cracked, shut your trap. Come back, get back.
So for our viewers who do not know, that is Snoop Dogg, and Snoop Dogg is actually from California. Now we have 50 Cent.
There was definitely a theme throughout the show, right?
Yeah, so next we have 50 Cent, and as you can see, he's hanging from the ceiling of the stage there, and that is because his original video, he was doing the same thing.
And as far as I remember, 50 Cent wasn't announced ahead of time. This was a surprise for everybody, right?
Oh, I did not know that.
I'm pretty sure. And then here, we want to see this because I think a lot of us enjoyed this performance the most. Let's see if this buffers quickly.
Come on, everybody, get on down. Cause you know we got to get it from. Mary Jack's in the spot tonight, and I'ma make you feel alright. Come on, baby, this party with me. That music set your body free. Give you situations at the door, but when you step inside, jump on the floor.
So did any of you guys mention, I know we talked about that we all, this music resonates a lot with us because we're of a certain age, but did anybody mention the ages of the performers?
We did not. Do any of our guests know the average age or the age range of our performers? I do, but I'd be curious to know. Any comments?
I do too, because I follow Mary J. Blige on Instagram, and I remember being shocked last year when everybody was wishing her a happy 50th birthday. And so she's 51, I think. And I think the rest of the performers, minus Kendrick Lamar, also in their late 40s. I think Snoop Dogg's almost 50. Eminem is definitely 49. And Kendrick Lamar, he was thrown in there to give the younger generation something to watch for too, right?
Lower the average age, or who knows? Either way, they were all very, very, very great. And every performance melded into the next. And I can't imagine how quickly, what we don't get to see when we're watching the Super Bowl from the screen is how they actually came onto the field and put everything together and everyone got ready for the show. All right, so I'm going to take this moment to throw out another question, and that's going to be, can someone tell me quickly one of the artists who performed at the halftime show?
Here, while people are thinking, I'll play a little bit more of maybe somebody else's performance so you can see a clip of each person's. Also, I really liked this dance, so let's watch this. I think this is great choreography.
Man down, where you from? Where you from? Where you down, stay all night. This is
All's my life I has to fight. All's my life I hard times like yeah. Bad trips like, yeah, Nazareth. I'm on one, you on one. God got us, we gon' be all right. Oh, we gon' be all right. We gon' be all right. Oh, we gon' be all right. Do you hear me? Do you feel it? We gon' be all right.
Okay, I think my internet's slowing down. So, but you get the idea of how cool that choreography was from Kendrick Lamar's part. Do we have a winner in the question, Elvia?
Let's see. We are still waiting to get an answer about one of the artists who performed at the halftime show. The first viewer to get a right answer will receive a gift from the U.S. Embassy.
Well, here's another hint.
Heavy, this vomit on the sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he was calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on spaghetti, boy, he goes down. The whole crowd, oh so loud. He opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's joking now, everybody's joking now. The words run out, time's up, over, plow, snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity, oh, there goes gravity. So nasty, you want panties, he knows.
Does anybody remember that song from the movie 8 Mile?
That is definitely one of his biggest hits. Do our other guests have any favorite Eminem songs or any of the songs that were performed during the halftime show? How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a soft spot for Snoop Dogg, so I particularly like how yeah, Snoop Dogg he seems like he's just eternally cool. You know, everyone else seems like they're all super excited, and he's always the coolest cat on stage at all times.
I think a lot of people definitely went to the game in California, maybe just to see Snoop Dogg. Who knows? Maybe Sarah has an opinion on that. He also has a very interesting relationship with another American icon, whose name escapes me right now. The famous cook,
Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart. They have a very, very great relationship that we see all the time. It's very heartwarming. All right, Sarah, what about you?
I don't have any specific songs, but I just enjoyed the whole thing. I thought the whole spectacle was great. As I said, seeing, this rivals, seeing Prince play Purple Rain in the rain. The other one I went to, I guess it's this one. It was The Who, and it was, I mean, it's a big deal to see The Who, but it didn't hold a candle to either this or Prince. So I thought the whole thing was amazing.
Agreed. What about any other commercials, Nastia? Did we want to share some of the other ones that we saw during the Super Bowl this year?
Wasn't there one with Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart?
Martha Stewart? I think there might have been.
Was there?
Maybe it wasn't during the Super Bowl. Maybe it wasn't during the game.
There definitely are commercials with him and Martha Stewart together. I can look for it while we watch a different sort of commercial, if that's okay. I had one that I thought might be fun for those of you that are here because you're practicing your English today. And we can talk about it in a second, but just, open your ears and try to listen to this very carefully because you'll hear why in just a second. Okay, here it comes. Ready?
Sally sold seashells by the seashore. But the seashells didn't sell so well. So Sally set up a seashell store on Squarespace. Soon her seashells started selling. Sally was such a seaside sensation. She also sold swanky seashells accessories, seashell serenity sessions, savory seaside snacks, even seashell excursions up the seashore. Sally's seashells were so successful, she sailed into the setting sun as a seashell celebrity. Shucks.
All right. So I heard correctly. I think it's even hard for most Americans to be able to say that what we call a tongue twister, which is something that is very difficult to pronounce really quickly because the sounds all sound alike. So maybe we can each try saying the phrase that we saw there. So let's see who does it best. I'll try. Sally sold shells by the seashore. Was that it?
Seashells.
Sally sold seashells by the seashore. Matt, you want to try?
Sally sold seashells by the seashore. I would think it'd be fun if some of our audience could put an Uzbek tongue twister into the comments, and then our moderator could attempt to say it.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay, if someone puts an Uzbek tongue twister in our comments, I will try to say it. All right.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. Mission accepted. What about you, Sarah? Do you know any other English tongue twisters that we can share with the audience?
How much wood does a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I've practiced this one many times. We also have one about pickles. Do you know that one, Nastya?
I do. Is it Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, a peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked?
It is. Wow. It is. Very nice.
Touchdown.
Yes, touchdown. Like your nephew. All right. So maybe we still don't have a winner for our previous prize about who was a Super Bowl artist who performed this year. So that prize is still up for grabs. And if anyone wants to share any Uzbek tongue twisters, I would be more than happy to try to pronounce them. Let's see here.
I see one of our English teachers is online. I bet she has an Uzbek tongue twister, Fanera. Looking at you.
Oof.
One of our commenters says the Bic Small Lighters commercial is the one with Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. I don't know if you've run across that one, Nastya.
I haven't, but I can look for it real quick.
I know I've seen a commercial where it's both of them, and then one, it says like one of these two is a convicted felon, and you have to guess who. So I'm gonna try.
Come on, Elvia, let's see it. Let's
All
go,
right.
Elvia.
Except I think that's Russian, no?
Is that Russian? I'm sorry, viewer. I do not speak Russian. Let's see.
Well, fortunately, there are other Russian speakers here, Matt and Sarah.
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah. So is this Uzbek? I can try.
No, it's Russian.
Okay.
Carl and Clara stole a. Sorry, the chat's moving.
Karol ukral Karoli Aklara Karla ukrala clarinet.
Okay, I think we have one in Uzbek. Gana Gildirakna Gizelativ Gildirapta. Wait, okay. Gana Gildirakna Gizelativ Gildirapta.
Wow.
Is that terrible? What did I say?
Us.
Viewers, what did I say? Let's see. Oh gosh, we have some people who are cry laughing in the chat because it was either very, very bad.
That means you did perfectly. No, that means it was perfect.
Molotov.
Yeah, it's probably their ears are bleeding from my Russian, probably.
Hey,
oh, you got a not that bad, Matt.
Not that bad. We should do another series where we try to have Uzbeks and Americans pronounce their tongue twisters. We have another Barakala. Barakala. What am I saying, people?
Isn't that like excellent or something? Or cool or awesome?
I would assume so. Yeah, sure.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Barakala is excellent. My Uzbek teacher apparently never thought I did excellent because this is a new word. All right. Well, with that, we're coming to the end of our session. Unless there's any more questions from our audience, we are happy to have some final thoughts on football, the NFL, the Super Bowl, and we hope to do something like this again soon. All right. So, Matt, any final thoughts?
No, I think no, I think not everyone maybe is a fan of American football, but I think you, Elvia, and your colleagues have done a good job of explaining how it's kind of more than a game, right? It's a cultural institution, and between the music and the advertisements and everything, you really can learn a lot about the United States from watching and studying the Super Bowl. So this has been super interesting.
And thank you so much, Matt, for being here with us today. Do you have any thoughts on maybe another sport that compares to the Super Bowl, or would you say that it kind of stands alone? Our audience wants to know.
So in the United States, so I was lucky enough, I went to the World Cup when I was in Brazil, and that had a similar kind of feel to it, of just a huge party environment. I mean, Brazil is already, they're always in party mode. Yeah, you find a Brazilian and they're ready for a party, and then you combine Brazil and World Cup, and that was a great experience. And I had an opportunity to go to some of those games, and that was very similar because it was an all-day party before, after. And what made that really fun is it had just the international feel to it. The Super Bowl is very much an American event. In Brazil, you had people partying. It'd be people from Paraguay and Switzerland and Russia and Canada all kind of partying together, which made it really fun.
Oh, that sounds amazing. What about you, Sarah? Any final thoughts on the Super Bowl, or do you know if we can watch it on YouTube? Our audience wants to know.
I don't think we can watch it on YouTube. I think the NFL is very careful about protecting its copyright and trademarks and that sort of thing. You don't get to be a $9 billion a sport with $9 billion in revenue if you don't protect your brand very carefully. But people can see highlights, I'm sure. And I would just say, if you enjoyed this, we could talk about other American sports as well. Others are not as popular as the NFL. And as Matt pointed out, I mean, the World Cup or football, as you say, is bigger than the NFL. But in America, NFL is top. Thank you.
We had a question about the NBA. Do you know anything about the NBA, Nastia? And would you say it compares to the Super Bowl for our audience?
I know a lot about the NBA, Elvia, but I would just like to, the NBA All-Star Game is actually following. It's this weekend. It's coming up, so that I actually am bummed, because that means that the regular season takes a little pause and the regular games are not played. And then there's the NBA All-Star Game. It's the whole weekend. There's a whole bunch of different competitions. And then Sunday night will be the final, the big actual game. But I just wanted to point out two things real quick. Congratulations to Muhammad Azim, who named Snoop Dogg as one of the halftime performers. And the other thing I wanted to say was, in regards to what Matt and Sarah were just saying, there was a Super Bowl commercial that featured Jennifer Lopez, who everybody knows, and she was basically advertising at the Super Bowl that the Olympics will be on after the Super Bowl. And I thought that was super interesting, because it just underscores our point here that the Super Bowl in the United States is more important than the Olympics, which to a lot of other people might be the most important international sporting event in the world. But in the United States, the Super Bowl took precedence this year.
Right. So if we're going to rank, Super Bowl will be at the very top, and then everything else comes after, I would say. And I think our guests agree. So thank you all for being here with us. Thank you for our audience for providing interesting questions, for providing a tongue twister, and making us all laugh with our Russian and Uzbek pronunciation. We hope to do this again soon. Thank you on behalf of our guests, Sarah, Nastia, Matt. Thank you so much for being here with us. And until next time, bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for joining
Bye,
us.
everyone.